Catherine Harper had always known that some nights could change everything, and tonight felt like one of them. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom shimmered under the warm glow of crystal chandeliers, the scent of fresh roses mingling with polished marble, the low hum of conversation threading through the air like silk, and she paused at the grand entrance, her emerald green gown a deliberate statement of poise and purpose, heels clicking softly against the marble, drawing the subtle attention of every guest without a single word, while her ex-husband Ethan Caldwell, radiant in a tailored midnight blue suit, circulated confidently, smiling at his allies, unaware that the very power he assumed belonged to him had quietly shifted, the investors he believed were under his influence now leaning subtly toward Catherine's whispered guidance. As she moved through the crowd, her gaze met familiar faces, old colleagues, financiers, all noting the new aura surrounding her, the calm authority in the way. She held herself, her eyes briefly catching Ethan's, registering his unaware pride, a soft smile brushing her lips as she passed, a silent acknowledgment of the game already in motion. Every conversation, she entered becoming a careful chess move, the subtle placement of a hand on an arm, a thoughtful nod, a question that drew someone closer into her orbit, all unnoticed by him. All unnoticed by the man who once thought his charm and wealth would define the world, and in that slow, deliberate procession across the ballroom, every flicker of candlelight against her dress, every reflection in the polished floors, and every whispered exchange worked to establish her presence, to mark her as more than she had ever been in the past, a force quietly undeniable, while Ethan, smiling and confident, believed this night belonged solely to his performance, his influence, his triumph, and yet, the invisible threads Catherine had woven through weeks of discreet calls, meetings, and strategic alliances had set the stage for the quiet reversal, a reckoning to be revealed in the moments ahead, leaving every viewer on edge, wondering what would happen the instant he realized that the woman he had dismissed was now the one holding the levers of power he had so carelessly assumed were his own. Catherine Harper moved through the Ritz-Carlton ballroom with a quiet authority, every step measured, heels clicking in a deliberate rhythm that drew subtle attention without effort, the soft glow of crystal chandeliers catching the shimmer of her emerald gown as she approached small clusters of investors, greeting each with a calm confidence and a carefully curated smile that belied the storm of strategy beneath, her voice soft yet commanding as she engaged in conversation, asking precise questions that revealed her deep understanding of financial currents and market dynamics. Each nod and thoughtful pause pulling key players into her orbit, while Ethan Caldwell remained across the room, his laughter and gestures performing a practiced charm, unaware that the very decisions he intended to control were now guided by her influence. The subtle exchange of glances and whispered asides between Catherine and the investors weaving a network of loyalty and respect, an invisible web that expanded with every passing moment, her posture perfect, her composure unwavering, a living testament to resilience and calculated power. And as she circled the room, observing reactions and noting opportunities, the soft clink of champagne glasses, the delicate rustle of gowns, and the distant hum of a string quartet formed a symphony of sophistication that underscored her quiet dominance. Every interaction a micro-step toward consolidating authority, every carefully chosen word a brushstroke painting her new reality, while Ethan, still smiling, oblivious to the currents shifting around him, believed the night still belonged to his performance, his empire, his show, yet with each exchange Catherine drew closer to the pivotal moment, the subtle reversal that would soon render him speechless, leaving viewers with a sense of anticipation, the tension coiling in the air as the invisible threads of her influence quietly tightened, setting the stage for the revelation that would redefine every perception in the room. Catherine Harper stood near the grand staircase, the crystal chandeliers casting a kaleidoscope of light across the polished marble, her eyes sweeping the room with a calm, measured intensity, every movement precise as she approached the central cluster of investors who had once been solely Ethan Caldwell's domain, their attention now subtly drawn to her confident presence, the soft murmur of voices lowering as they noted her quiet authority, her hands resting lightly on the railing, the emerald fabric of her gown shimmering in the light, a visual declaration of her composure and power, while Ethan, still oblivious to the shift in influence, raised a glass with practiced charm, unaware that the very decisions he intended to command were now subtly guided by her. Catherine greeted each investor with thoughtful questions and nods of affirmation, each conversation reinforcing the silent network she had built, the invisible threads of her influence weaving a subtle yet undeniable pattern, her posture elegant, her composure unwavering, the soft clink of glasses and the gentle rustle of gowns forming a backdrop to the unfolding reversal. Every glance exchanged between Catherine and the key players a strategic maneuver, the tension in the air, palpable yet understated, as she slowly moved to the center of the room, commanding attention without a word. And in that quiet, deliberate moment, Ethan's smile faltered ever so slightly as he realized that his assumptions about control were no longer accurate. The room itself seemed to hold its breath, the soft glow of chandeliers reflecting in Catherine's eyes as she extended a simple greeting to the main investors, their subtle nods acknowledging her authority. And as Ethan's confidence wavered, the silent realization of her power became clear, the audience witnessing the ultimate reversal in real time, the subtle shift in control complete, yet leaving the outcome just at the edge of revelation, a suspended moment of anticipation, where every detail, the sparkle of her gown, the rhythm of her footsteps, the attentive eyes of the investors, the softened hum of the string quartet, signaled that the world Catherine had rebuilt was no longer just hers. It was untouchable, leaving viewers to linger on the cusp of the impending confrontation and eager to discover the full extent of her influence in the moments to come. Catherine Harper navigated the ballroom with a quiet, deliberate grace, her emerald gown catching every flicker of candlelight and reflecting it back like a subtle declaration of power, while the gentle murmur of the crowd seemed to shift in her favor, as if every whispered conversation and attentive glance were pieces of a carefully orchestrated symphony she alone conducted. She approached the center of the room where the most influential investors lingered, her presence commanding without a word, the soft rustle of silk and the rhythmic click of her heels forming a cadence that drew every eye toward her. And as she exchanged calm, confident pleasantries, noting each nod and subtle gesture, the invisible web of her influence expanded further, wrapping the key players into her orbit. Ethan Caldwell, standing across the room with his familiar confident smile, remained unaware that his assumed control had quietly evaporated, his gaze scanning the room for opportunities that no longer belonged to him. Every gesture he made, every handshake, every casual laugh, now played out against the backdrop of a reality he could not yet perceive. Catherine's eyes met his for a brief moment, a subtle, knowing sparkle passing between them, not of malice but of undeniable authority. A gentle reminder that the world he had once tried to dominate now moved to her rhythm. She guided a conversation with the largest investor with a carefully phrased question that prompted thoughtful agreement, a small nod, a shift in tone, the subtle transfer of influence happening in real time, the chandeliers above catching the shimmer of her dress, each crystal reflecting the quiet confidence and poise she radiated, while the string quartet played softly, the music almost a whisper of the tension in the room, every guest sensing that something monumental was unfolding without needing a single explanation. Catherine moved deliberately from group to group, her words precise, her gestures minimal yet full of intent, guiding decisions and opinions with a light touch that seemed effortless, a silent demonstration of skill and power. Ethan's expression began to change, the confident facade slipping into the faintest flicker of uncertainty as the realization crept in, subtle yet undeniable, that the control he assumed was never truly his. And as Catherine paused at the edge of the staircase, the soft murmur of the crowd aligning with her movements, she allowed herself a brief, composed breath, knowing that the moment of revelation was near, every glance and gesture she had orchestrated converging toward a quiet, impending climax that would leave the ballroom suspended in anticipation, viewers on the edge of their seats, sensing the gravity of what was about to unfold. And the soft golden light of the chandeliers seemed to spotlight her as the pivot of a story that had been building in silence, her quiet triumph poised to be unveiled in the next instant. Catherine Harper paused at the edge of the central ballroom, the soft glow of the chandeliers illuminating her poised figure, the emerald fabric of her gown flowing elegantly with every subtle movement, while the gentle hum of conversation seemed to quiet slightly as the key investors turned their attention toward her presence, their expressions shifting from polite acknowledgment to a subtle recognition of authority, each small nod and exchanged glance reinforcing the invisible network she had quietly woven over weeks of strategic planning. Her voice, calm and steady, engaged them in precise questions that prompted reflection and thoughtful agreement, every word measured, every gesture purposeful, while Ethan Caldwell, standing near the grand staircase with his signature confident smile, remained unaware that the influence he had assumed belonged to him had now subtly migrated to Catherine's. Command, the soft clinking of champagne glasses, the rustle of designer gowns, and the distant notes of the string quartet, providing a refined soundtrack to the unfolding quiet reversal as she navigated the clusters of investors, observing their reactions with keen eyes, her subtle directions and nuanced interactions guiding them toward her perspective without ever appearing forceful. The room itself seemingly bending to the rhythm of her movements. And when her gaze met Ethan's briefly across the polished marble floor, a faint flicker of understanding passed through his eyes. Though he could not yet grasp the full scope of the shift, Catherine's calm confidence a stark contrast to the growing unease in his expression. Every step she took, every carefully chosen word, further solidified her position, her presence a silent declaration of the authority she now wielded. And as she paused to accept a congratulatory comment from one of the investors, the subtle acknowledgment from several others, previously aligned with Ethan, reinforced the quiet but undeniable power she had cultivated. The golden light of the chandeliers catching the shimmer of her gown, every reflection a testament to her composed mastery of the moment, while Ethan's controlled gestures and practiced charm faltered imperceptibly under the weight of unperceived influence. The suspense in the room coiling tightly, the audience witnessing the meticulous orchestration of control, the culmination of Catherine's strategic patience unfolding in real time, leaving viewers on edge, anticipating the impending revelation, the quiet reversal that would transform every perception in the ballroom and redefine the balance of power before the evening concluded. Catherine Harper moved with unshakable poise through the grand ballroom, the soft golden light of the chandeliers reflecting off the polished marble floors and catching the subtle shimmer of her emerald gown, every step deliberate, every gesture measured, as she engaged the circle of top investors with a quiet authority that left no doubt of her influence, her soft, steady voice weaving through conversations, drawing attention, without commanding it overtly, while Ethan Caldwell, across the room, maintained his practiced charm, unaware that the very people he believed were aligned with him now leaned subtly toward Catherine's guidance. She exchanged thoughtful questions, gentle nods, and slight smiles that conveyed a depth of understanding and control far beyond casual networking, each investor responding with subtle shifts, the small gestures of respect and attentiveness signaling their alignment. And as she paused briefly to observe Ethan, the faintest crease appeared on his brow, the first hint that the careful image he projected was beginning to waver. Catherine's eyes met his for a fleeting moment, calm, confident, and unyielding, a silent assertion of her position and the power she had quietly amassed over weeks of strategic connections. The ambient hum of conversation and distant notes of the string quartet underscored the refined tension in the room, while the gentle clink of champagne glasses punctuated the subtle shifts of attention. Catherine moved seamlessly from one group to the next, her presence a pivot around which the atmosphere quietly revolved, each nod, smile, and word she offered reinforcing the invisible network of influence she commanded, the air thick with anticipation, yet subtle in its manifestation. Ethan's confident smile faltering imperceptibly as the reality he had ignored began to assert itself, the audience sensing the slow, elegant reversal, the culmination of Catherine's meticulous preparation, and as she lingered near the center of the room, the soft rustle of silk and quiet cadence of her footsteps created a rhythm that drew all attention toward her, the tension rising almost imperceptibly, a poised calm masking the strategic brilliance at play. Each careful word, and gesture working in concert to assert control without overt confrontation, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats, aware that the moment of revelation was imminent, a silent crescendo building toward the instant when the full scope of Catherine's influence would become undeniable to everyone in the room, including Ethan, whose unawareness made the impending acknowledgment of her authority all the more powerful and dramatic. Catherine Harper paused near the center of the ballroom, the soft golden light from the crystal chandeliers catching the subtle shimmer of her emerald gown, casting reflections across the polished marble that seemed to follow her every deliberate step. And as she lifted her hand in a measured gesture toward the circle of key investors, their attention subtly shifted. The slight inclinations of heads, the gentle nods, and attentive expressions confirming that her presence had become the pivot around which influence now moved. Ethan Caldwell remained across the room, his confident smile unwavering but a faint crease betraying the first hints of doubt, his carefully rehearsed charm slowly colliding with the reality of Catherine's quiet authority. Every soft clink of champagne glasses, the muted rustle of silk gowns, and the distant strains of the string quartet punctuating the refined tension as Catherine engaged each investor with a poised, calm voice, asking precise questions that drew thoughtful agreement, her posture elegant, her gestures minimal but imbued with purpose, each interaction reinforcing the invisible network of power she had meticulously constructed. And when her gaze met Ethan's briefly, the calm sparkle in her eyes conveyed not confrontation, but an undeniable assertion of dominance, a subtle but powerful declaration of control. She moved from one cluster to another, her presence commanding yet understated, a magnetic force pulling attention naturally, each nod, smile, and carefully chosen word consolidating her influence, while Ethan's expressions faltered imperceptibly, the room itself seeming to bend to her rhythm as the whispers and subtle glances of the investors reinforced her authority. And as she paused to acknowledge a comment from one of the leading financiers, the recognition in his eyes reflected the quiet power she now held. Ethan's confident demeanor showing cracks as he registered the shift he could not yet fully grasp. Catherine's calm composure, measured interactions, and deliberate movements created an elegant tension in the room. A silent crescendo building as every detail, from the shimmer of her gown to the cadence of her footsteps and the attentive eyes of the investors, combined to signal that the balance of influence had decisively moved, leaving viewers on edge, anticipating the full revelation, the silent reversal that would redefine perception, asserting Catherine's authority with a refined and commanding elegance that left Ethan and the audience alike suspended in a moment of poised anticipation. Catherine Harper felt the subtle shift in the room as she approached the main cluster of investors, each step deliberate, her heels echoing softly on the polished marble, the emerald gown flowing gracefully with her movement, reflecting the golden light of the chandeliers above. And as she greeted each investor with a calm, poised voice, her words carefully measured to convey insight and authority, the investors responded with attentive nods and thoughtful engagement, their attention now fully aligned with her, while Ethan Caldwell, standing across the room, still unaware of the change in influence, smiled confidently, believing the night remained under his control. Yet each passing exchange between Catherine and the key investors strengthened the silent network she had meticulously crafted, the soft clink of glasses and the gentle murmur of conversations forming a refined symphony that underscored her quiet command. Catherine's gaze swept the room, noting subtle gestures of respect and acknowledgment, her posture perfect, her presence commanding without force, and in a brief moment, her eyes met Ethan's, calm, measured, and unwavering, a quiet assertion of the power he had underestimated, every exchange, every nod, every carefully considered word reinforcing the perception that she had become the unseen orchestrator of decisions he once assumed were solely his. The room itself seemed to respond to her rhythm, the soft rustle of silk, the faint whisper of investors discussing initiatives, and the delicate background music all harmonizing to frame her influence. As she moved seamlessly through the clusters, the careful placement of gestures and attentive listening guiding choices without overt direction, the tension in Ethan's expression gradually growing as the realization began to dawn. Catherine's controlled smile never wavering, her calm confidence, radiating throughout the space. The subtle interplay of light on the chandeliers reflecting her poise, and the quiet attention of the investors forming an invisible web of power, the culmination of her patient strategy, leaving viewers aware that the revelation of her authority was imminent, the anticipation rising. Every detail from the shimmer of her gown to the rhythm of her steps to the soft attentiveness of the investors signaling that the balance had irrevocably shifted, a silent, elegant reversal that would soon be undeniable to Ethan and all who witnessed it, creating a poised, cinematic tension that held the room in suspense. The moment before the final acknowledgment of Catherine's complete command over the evening's unfolding events. Catherine Harper stood at the center of the Ritz-Carlton ballroom, her emerald gown shimmering softly under the golden chandeliers, the polished marble reflecting the subtle rhythm of her deliberate steps. And as she spoke with the key investors, her voice calm and confident, precise in its timing and tone, their attention shifted fully toward her, every nod, every thoughtful glance, every quiet acknowledgment, reinforcing her authority, while Ethan Caldwell, still confident in his assumed control, surveyed the room with practiced charm, unaware that the very influence he believed was his own had already migrated to Catherine's careful guidance. She navigated the clusters of investors with an effortless grace, listening intently, offering subtle affirmations, asking questions that prompted reflection and agreement. Every word and gesture weaving the invisible web of power she had built over weeks of strategic planning, the soft clink of glasses, the gentle rustle of silk, and the low hum of conversation underscoring the tension. Catherine's eyes occasionally flicking toward Ethan, calm, assured, conveying the unspoken shift in authority, the subtle realization beginning to form in his expression, though still incomplete, the ballroom itself seeming to bend to her rhythm. The focus of attention now orbiting her with an invisible gravity, as she paused to acknowledge a quiet comment from one of the lead investors, the nods and smiles around her confirming that the alignment was complete. Every interaction, every measured word, every graceful gesture contributing to the culmination of her patient strategy. Ethan's facade beginning to falter ever so slightly as he sensed the shift, the anticipation in the room thick, yet understated. A silent crescendo of influence building toward the moment when the full scope of her authority would be undeniable. Catherine's calm, composed presence, radiating through the crowd, the subtle shimmer of her gown, the soft cadence of her footsteps, and the attentive eyes of the investors together creating an atmosphere of poised power, the soft strains of the string quartet, providing a refined backdrop as the final threads of control settled quietly into her hands, leaving viewers aware that the revelation was imminent, the silent, elegant reversal poised to reshape the evening, asserting Catherine's dominance without a word, a quiet but complete victory in influence and authority. And as she took a deliberate breath, the golden light of the chandeliers reflecting in her eyes, every detail, from the subtle gestures to the polished surroundings, signaled that the balance had shifted entirely, leaving Ethan and the audience alike suspended in a moment of poised anticipation for the final acknowledgment of her command. Catherine Harper felt the atmosphere of the ballroom tighten subtly around her as she moved with unwavering poise, the soft glow of chandeliers reflecting off her emerald gown, casting delicate patterns on the polished marble beneath her feet, while the faint hum of conversation, punctuated by the clink of glasses and the gentle rustle of silk, provided a refined soundtrack to the quiet shift in influence she had orchestrated over weeks of careful planning, her gaze meeting the eyes of each key investor with calm confidence, every subtle nod, smile, and thoughtful word drawing them closer into alignment, their attention fully captured by her poised authority. And across the room, Ethan Caldwell maintained his polished smile, yet the faintest shadow of uncertainty began to etch across his expression as he sensed, though could not yet fully comprehend, that his assumed control over the evening had quietly slipped from his grasp. Catherine approached the central group with measured steps, her posture elegant, her gestures minimal but purposeful, her voice steady as she posed a question that prompted thoughtful responses, guiding the investors without the need for overt commands, each interaction reinforcing the subtle web of influence she had woven. the soft shimmer of her gown and the rhythmic cadence of her heels emphasizing the quiet dominance she exuded. And as she paused to acknowledge a comment from one of the most influential financiers, the gentle nods and expressions of respect from others confirmed the alignment she had achieved, the room itself seeming to respond to her presence. Ethan's confidence beginning to waver as the first clear signs of his miscalculation surfaced, Catherine's eyes met his once again, calm, deliberate, and commanding, conveying not anger but an undeniable assertion of authority, the subtle tension in the air building toward the impending revelation, every element of the ballroom, the golden light, the soft hum of conversation, the reflections in the marble, the attentive eyes of the investors, working in concert to underscore the quiet reversal that had taken place, leaving viewers aware that the culmination of her patient strategy was imminent, a poised, silent triumph that would soon be fully recognized, the elegance of her composure and the careful orchestration of influence converging to create a moment of suspense and anticipation that held Ethan and the entire room in rapt attention. The final acknowledgment of her power lingering just on the horizon, ready to unfold in the next decisive instant. Catherine Harper stepped forward into the heart of the ballroom, the golden light of the chandeliers illuminating the subtle shimmer of her emerald gown, her presence commanding the attention of every investor and guest without a word, as she exchanged calm, deliberate pleasantries, the soft cadence of her voice drawing nods and thoughtful expressions, while Ethan Caldwell, still confident in his assumed control, observed her movements with a growing sense of unease he could not yet articulate, the gentle clinking of glasses and muted conversations forming a refined background to the quiet assertion of influence she had cultivated. Each small gesture, every carefully chosen phrase, reinforcing the silent web of power that now rested in her hands. Catherine moved with precision, pausing briefly to acknowledge the input of one of the leading financiers, their subtle nods and expressions of recognition signaling her complete alignment with the room's most influential players. And as she glanced toward Ethan, the faintest crease appeared on his brow, the first real indication that his assumptions were being challenged. Catherine's eyes met his briefly, calm and unyielding, conveying authority. Without confrontation, every detail, the gentle rustle of silk, the rhythmic click of her heels on the polished marble, the soft gleam of crystal reflecting off her gown, adding to the perception of poised dominance. And as she circled among the investors, her soft, deliberate words guiding their decisions with understated elegance, Ethan's confident posture faltered. The realization that control had quietly shifted dawning ever so subtly across his features, the ambient hum of conversation and the low strains of the string quartet underscoring the tension that hung delicately in the air. Catherine's measured gestures and attentive listening weaving together the intricate pattern of influence she had built, the room itself seeming to bend to her rhythm, the anticipation rising with each interaction, viewers sensing the meticulous orchestration and the impending revelation, a quiet crescendo building as every attentive glance, every subtle acknowledgment, and every carefully orchestrated moment moved the narrative toward the climax, her calm composure radiating authority, her presence an elegant pivot around which the balance of power had shifted completely, leaving Ethan and the audience alike suspended in poised anticipation. The room held in a delicate tension as Catherine's silent mastery of influence prepared to be fully recognized, and in that poised, luminous moment, the subtle acknowledgment of her command and the quiet reversal of control poised to transform the evening, signaling to viewers that the long-awaited revelation was on the verge of unfolding. Catherine Harper stood at the heart of the Ritz-Carlton ballroom, the soft golden glow of chandeliers catching the shimmer of her emerald gown as she raised her hand slightly in acknowledgment of a key investor's insight, the room responding with subtle shifts, polite nods, and attentive gazes that silently confirmed her complete command, while Ethan Caldwell, standing near the grand staircase, finally felt the faintest tremor in his carefully maintained composure. The confidence that had carried him through countless events now wavering as the reality of Catherine's influence became undeniable. She moved through the center of the room with the poise of someone entirely in control, her voice calm and measured as she engaged with each investor, asking precise, thoughtful questions that drew agreement and subtle admiration, every gesture deliberate, every smile nuanced, weaving a tapestry of authority that left no doubt as to who now held sway. The gentle rustle of silk, the soft clink of glasses, and the ambient hum of conversation forming a refined backdrop to her quiet assertion of power. Catherine's eyes met Ethan's briefly, a controlled sparkle communicating confidence and silent triumph. The room itself seeming to shift toward her rhythm, every glance, every subtle acknowledgment reinforcing the web of influence she had cultivated. She paused to offer a courteous remark to a leading financier, their nod and attentive expression signaling complete alignment. The soft shimmer of chandeliers reflecting off her gown accentuating her composed elegance and the gravity of her presence. Ethan's facade began to crack imperceptibly, the first clear recognition of the shift in balance settling across his expression. Catherine's careful orchestration of attention, dialogue, and gestures achieving a poised and silent reversal of influence. Every detail from the rhythmic cadence of her heels on the marble, to the quiet attentiveness of the investors, to the refined interplay of ambient light and shadows, creating a cinematic tableau of quiet power. The anticipation building as viewers sensed the culmination of her patient strategy, the elegant tension in the room reaching its apex, a poised, subtle crescendo that signaled the completion of her silent victory. And as Catherine took a composed breath, the golden light reflecting in her eyes, the ballroom suspended in a moment of poised acknowledgment, the unspoken recognition of her mastery of influence leaving Ethan and all present in awe, the elegant, quiet reversal fully realized, and the story of her calculated, patient, and unyielding authority leaving viewers on edge, eager for the next unfolding chapter. Catherine Harper took a final, measured step toward the grand staircase, the soft golden light of the chandeliers reflecting off her emerald gown and creating delicate patterns on the polished marble, the ambient hum of conversation and distant strains of the string quartet providing a refined backdrop to the moment, as she allowed herself a calm, composed smile, acknowledging subtle nods from the key investors whose attention now fully gravitated toward her, while Ethan Caldwell, standing a few steps away, washed with a mixture of disbelief and dawning realization, the confidence he had relied upon for so long now faltering as he perceived the full extent of her influence. Catherine's voice, soft yet unwavering, carried through the space as she offered a brief, courteous remark to the group, prompting thoughtful engagement and quiet agreement, her gestures graceful and deliberate, every movement reinforcing her poise and the control she had quietly amassed. And as she glanced once more toward Ethan, her eyes conveyed the depth of her quiet triumph, not through confrontation or overt display, but through the undeniable presence of authority and composure, the subtle alignment of the investors, the attentive glances of the guests, and the gentle acknowledgment of her orchestration of influence creating a tableau of silent victory, the room itself seeming to respond to her calm, precise movements. Every reflective surface and flicker of chandelier light emphasizing the elegance and decisiveness of the moment. Ethan's expression finally registering the shift completely, the reality of his miscalculation apparent as Catherine continued her measured interactions with those around her, the soft rhythm of her heels, the rustle of silk gowns, and the clink of glasses punctuating the composed cadence of her performance, each small exchange reinforcing her mastery over the evening. The delicate tension in the air holding the audience and the guests in a suspended anticipation. And as Catherine stood with quiet assurance, the investors subtly aligned with her perspective. Ethan's once unwavering confidence now tempered with the realization that control had decisively moved. The ambient lighting, the reflective marble, the attentive expressions, and the poised movements of Catherine together forming a cinematic moment of complete and silent reversal, leaving the ballroom in a state of poised acknowledgment and viewers with the lingering impression of a meticulously orchestrated triumph, a quiet assertion of authority that required no words to declare her ultimate victory.